My name is Howard Davies, and along with Maria Zhivitskaya, I am one of the authors of a piece in the Handbook called The Limits of Voluntarism, which is essentially about the rules that are set internationally for global banking. In the article, we explain that almost all international regulation of finance is developed by bodies like the Basel Committee, which do not have a legal basis, do not find their powers embodied in an international treaty. There is in the financial area nothing comparable to the treaty-based World Trade Organization. The regulators from the member countries go to Basel and work as hard as they can to develop an international agreement, usually on capital standards, but on other things too, and then go back to their own countries and agree to implement it on a so-called best endeavours basis. But there is no legal certainty around the way in which those agreements are implemented in individual countries. Now, some argue that that is not necessarily a bad thing and that soft law can be as effective as black letter law. And there is decent evidence over several decades that the Basel Committee's work has served to raise capital standards and to promote financial stability. But our view is that this soft law approach is increasingly inadequate and is not enough to police the extremely interconnected global financial system which has grown up. The system is vulnerable to, if you like, free riders. The only policing of the international standards is effectively indirect in that some countries may say, well, we will not allow a bank to do business in our jurisdiction unless its home jurisdiction is fully meeting Basel standards. But in practice, that discipline is extremely hard to impose. There are not many countries who will refuse a license to a Chinese bank on those grounds, or to a Russian bank or whoever. Now, there have been attempts to put the global regulatory system onto a sounder legal basis. When it was set up, the Financial Stability Board was seen as a candidate to provide a legal framework for international financial regulation. Indeed, Tim Geithner, when US Treasury Secretary, referred to the Financial Stability Board as a potential fourth pillar of the global financial system. It did not work out that way, and the Financial Stability Board, which loosely oversees the Basel Committee and other regulators, is as informal as they are. Now, given that failure, even after the financial crisis of 2007 to 2009, which shocked policymakers globally and caused them to think hard about the system that they had in place, even though that did not happen, it may now seem as though it will never happen. Now, that could be true, and perhaps some would say it's an odd time to re-articulate the view that there should be a stronger legal basis for global financial regulation when the international rule-based order in general is under considerable threat from the attitude of the Trump administration in Washington. But one can equally argue that the current circumstance demonstrates the importance of the argument that Maria and I set out in the paper. Even Scott Bessent, perhaps the more conventional voice of the Trump administration, has said that the US should no longer take its rules from Basel as a matter of course, that if Basel has some bright ideas, maybe they will follow them. But the implication being that the US will go its own way on banking regulation. So the previous assumption that countries would voluntarily comply with Basel standards, even if not legally obliged to no longer seems to apply. And in my view, it would be better if the US needed to abrogate some international treaty to go its own way and not simply to walk off the pitch, as it can do at the moment. It might still abrogate such a treaty, but of course, Congress would then be involved, and so there would be some checks and balances on an administration. So, in our view, the arguments advanced in the paper are as important as ever. It's reasonable to say that in the near term, we are unlikely to be able to develop enough consensus in favour of a legal foundation for the Basel rules, but a new US administration might well see advantage in tying its successors' hands more tightly to reduce the threats to an international financial order based on rules which are evident with the current president and his America First agenda. So for reasons we did not imagine when we wrote the paper, I think its argument is as strong and as important as it was when we did.